She is a traditional business owner, her and her husband. She's a mom. She's a wife. She's a volunteer in her community. She serves on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Mm. She cares for her father now. She's regional vice president in 3.5 years. Now, remember what I said about billionaire Kenny Trout's mom said, you don't have to be the best, just do what? Your very best. I'm so happy to have this young lady come on our call to talk to you. Without further ado, Regional Vice President, Miss Keri Roeder.
Good morning, everybody. I don't normally sound this way. I actually lost my voice starting Saturday night, and then I've been mute for a few days, which anybody who knows me knows that is awfully strange. I never not talk. I had actually texted Mr. Thomas when I woke up Monday morning and said, I don't have a voice. If you want to reschedule me, have somebody else be put in, I would more than understand. And he said, nope, God's gonna cure this. And here I am. So I'm gonna get through this the best I can. This topic always actually makes me lose my voice because I'm so passionate about the topic that Mr. Thomas asked me to address. The topic that Mr. Thomas asked me to talk about is actually convention. And there's, I'm going to tell you my story. It's the best way for me to kind of relate the power of convention. And for those of you who are on this call who've never been to a convention, I want you to hear the story in a way that it could apply to you. Okay, at the very beginning of my story. Now, for those of you who went to your first convention with us in Fort Worth just now, the second part of my story actually applies to you. And then for those of you who may have been around for a minute, a little more seasoned, right? I want you to hear my story from the perspective of my mentor, my first mentor at the time. Okay, because as leaders, when we've been around for a minute, this is something that if you choose to do what Mrs. Wagner, my first mentor, chose to do for me, your life could absolutely be impacted. So, and I know I have 15 minutes, and so I'm going to be effective and efficient with my time in my storytelling. So I took notes. It's always a good idea to take notes. So here's the true journey to regional vice president for us in 2010. So when I got started in May of 2010, I was too busy to do this. I was working 7 days a week with my husband. I was volunteering in my daughter's classroom every day. I was a room mom, so I threw the parties. I've always been super focused on being mom first, okay? I was on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. I chaired an ambassador team. I did that, not just to give back to my community, obviously to build my 4 traditional businesses and, market. I belonged to a service club with my dad. Something else I did. Anyway, way too busy to build ACN, okay? But I got started when I saw the video because I saw value. Eventually, I went to my first Tuesday night BOM, and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. So I went to my first Saturday training. It was amazing. So I started having PBRs and doing this. So now this is the whole month of May. I was too busy to build ACN, but I was kind of poking away at it. Got my first couple business partners. Well, in the beginning of June 2010, I was driving home from a Tuesday night, and I remember they put up the positions and they put up the money. And at the time, regional director was called team coordinator. And And I remember looking at that money thinking, that's the kind of money I need in order to really make this worth my time and give us more time back. So I called my first mentor, who I hadn't really seen since I got started. I said, hey, Mrs. Wagner, do you don't remember me? I'm Keri Roeder. I'm Michael's cousin from up in the Auburn area. She's like, yeah, I remember you. I said, hey, listen, I'm driving home from Sacramento. They flashed up that money again, that team coordinator thing. I need that team coordinator thing. That's the kind of money I can justify spending my time for. And she goes, okay, well, let me ask you a question. Are you going to be coachable? I was like, yeah, I'm super coachable. Played sports, blah, blah, blah. I'm super coachable. She goes, okay. She goes, let me ask you another question. Okay, what is it? She's like, will you be coachable? And I'm like, yeah, I just said I'd be coachable, right? I go, yeah, of course I'll be coachable. Absolutely. What do I need to do? I need this for my family. She's like, okay, another question. She goes, will you be coachable? And I'm like, getting frustrated at this point. I'm like, yes, I will be coachable. What do I need to do? She goes, okay, last question. Will you be coachable? And I'm like, yes, what do I need to do? She goes, well, we have a convention happening in Cleveland, Ohio. in 10 days and I need you to go with me. And I was like, oh, hey, lady, remember me? 4 businesses, young child, blah, blah, blah. I can't jump on a plane in 10 days. Her answer to me was, you said you'd be coachable. So the next morning, I'm in my office, drop off my kid, do my volunteering. I'm in my business office and I'm on the line with Southwest and I'm on the computer and I'm on the phone with Southwest. And as I'm booking the last flight from Northern California to Cleveland, Ohio, which by the way, I had to drive 4 hours to get on that plane. I'm going like this. My husband walks in, he goes, what are you doing? And I'm all, oh. I go, I'm booking a flight to Cleveland, Ohio. He's like, what? So short version is, I, in 9 days, bought a 9-day plane ticket. You know how expensive that was, especially being the last one out of California. They could charge me what they wanted, right? I arrived Thursday night and then 1:30 in the morning. I knocked on a hotel door that Mrs. Wagner told me to go to, and some random woman answered the door I was sleeping with. Okay. So Friday, I go into convention and I was like, whoa, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And I'm not a rah-rah girl. I'm like a party girl, but I'm not a rah-rah girl. Okay. But this was amazing. So I sat there Friday, and then Friday night we had a team thing. And then Saturday morning, I'm sitting there in the VIP seats that they gave me, and training's going on, recognition's going on. It was all great. And then suddenly there was this senior vice president promotion and the world just opened up. And I don't have enough time to tell the whole story, but as he was walking up with his children, he got to the podium.
Dear, take your time. You got more than 15 minutes. Take your time.
So I'm sitting in row G, I think row G13 or something like that. I still have the ticket. And the senior vice president says to me, there's 25,000 people there, but he says to me, he's pointing and he's looking at me, and he says, you can do this. He said, fight for your family, Keri. You can do this. And he's talking to me. He's talking to 25,000 people, but he's talking to me. And I felt like I could run through a brick wall. I knew that this is my future. This is my contribution to taking care of my daughter. And so that night, okay, so that part of the story is for those of you who've never been to a convention. If you don't go, you won't know. It wasn't the training, you guys. The training you can get on Saturdays, the training you get one-on-one with Mr. Thomas. It was the experience of hearing somebody else's struggle and tell me that I could do this. I could fight for my family, that I found it. So then that night, of course, mind you, all this travel, all this excitement, all this adrenaline, I'm going to run through the walls. I'm going to hit senior vice president faster than anybody, right? So that night, here I am in Cleveland, Ohio. My husband's back in California, so we're 3 hours difference. And he's, helping our daughter, all that. And he calls me, and I'm like, oh, I kept trying to get a hold of him, and he wouldn't answer. Finally, he calls me. He's like, what's going on? I said, I don't have my calendar. I just need to make sure that September, blah, blah, blah is cleared. He's like, why? I go, oh, because you know what? Never mind. I've already signed up. He's all, signed up for what? I go, I'm signed up for the next convention. I'm going to North Carolina to clear, to whatever that's called, Charlotte, North Carolina. And he goes, what? I go, I'm going to North Carolina in September. He goes, what do you mean you're going to North Carolina? You're not even home and you're already going to another one? So now this is for the message for all of you who went to one. I was so mad. I said some choice words to my husband in that moment, and I won't repeat them, but the message was basically this. So sorry for the language. Screw you. You don't know what I know. You're not here experiencing what I'm experiencing. So don't you dare tell me that I can't go to another convention. I mean, I was, choice words. I said, so screw you. If this is how it's going to be, I'm getting on the next plane coming home right now because I'm exhausted. But you don't know what I don't know, and screw you, because this is how I'm going to get you to have time with your daughter. Don't you dare question me ever again. And he goes, well, I wasn't questioning you. I was just wondering. The power that conventions give you to be able to make decisions and disregard what everybody else thinks of you, that's the power of conventions. Okay, so then what ended up happening was, okay, so then the next one in September, I go and I bring a little team of 5, right? And we're at this big team event, and I stand up. They were handing the microphone around, and I what, I don't know what made me do it. God, I guess. I stood up and I announced, I will be team coordinator by the next event. And I'm all, wait, who just said that? What the heck? Who just said that? Right? And so being at my second event, having my team of 5, I had the courage to declare publicly that I would hit team coordinator by a certain date. So here's what happened. January of 2011, so less than a year getting started, I hit team coordinator. I was only team coordinator for 11 months. I was in so much production. I was in the top of the team coordinator position. Thousands of people were already team coordinator ahead of me, that we qualified to go on the President's Club retreat to New Orleans. Okay, so then what happened was my husband decided to go to an international event with us in San Jose. We went and bought him suits. That's a funny story for another time. We got Pretty Woman. I was pissed. Anyway, 4 suits later. Anyway, so my husband suits up, goes with me to an event in San Jose after he met Mr. Thomas. That's a story for another time about regionals. And he got to see the bigger event. He got to see Mr. Thomas again at the event, but he got to see the bigger picture and he was sold out. We went regional director, which is kind of just different steps, right? At that now it's called regional director, but we went regional director at exactly 12 months after having been team coordinators. And then what happened was, because we were both building it together, we both had the belief, December 2013, we hit regional vice president. So now let me share with you, life happens. Life happens. And I made some choices to put my daughter first and to put my family first. And I'm not going to go into those details, but life happens. So for the last 10 years, I have been in cruise control in building ACN. In that, I've never missed a convention. I continue to peak. I continue to present. I continue to get customers, but I'm not building at the pace in which I was building to get to regional vice president. So back to the power of what conventions give you. When I was turning 40 years old 10 years ago, my 3 best friends and I were planning a 40th girls trip. Okay, they wouldn't wait for me to tell them when I was my next convention was, so they booked it. We had convention. Guess what? I didn't go to my 40th girls trip. I was devastated, but they wouldn't wait for me. Guess what? 10 years now. A month ago, we're trying to plan our 50th girls trip, and then last month they would not wait for me to let them know when our fall convention is. So I finally said, screw it, just book it, girls, right? So they booked the resort we're staying at, and then I was laughing because they went to go buy plane tickets. They're like, oh, can't get plane tickets. I'm like, no, idiots, you can't do it 6 months in advance. You were all in such a hurry. But you know what? If that girls trip falls at convention in fall, I'm not going on my girls trip. My daughter and paying for college is more important. And if they're not going to love me enough and they're going to screw me again out of another girls trip, fine. Fine, because my daughter is more important than friends since 1979, by the way, since we were 6. How jacked up is that? I hope this doesn't get out to them, but so the power of events. So here's the thing. Along the way, I was missing family events. And my sister-in-law said to me, my brother's wife said, hey, Keri, you know, you're really missing a lot of family events. And I looked at her and I said, Joanne, let me ask you a question. If I were a cop, if I were a nurse, if I were a doctor and I couldn't get my shift off, and the aha moment on her face. See, because we're non-traditional, people think that we get to call Greg and go, hey, that convention date doesn't work for me. Can you switch it? Hey, Mr. Thomas, I know you're super busy and you're flying into Sacramento and that's your only date you can do regional. Doesn't work for me. No, you guys. So I encourage you to use that example when people give you, you know what, for missing things. Now today, here we are. I made a decision years ago that when my daughter turned 18, I was turning 50. And when she moved out of the house, that I was going all out massive action. And here we are now. She's living on her own, we're paying, right? But she's not in our home anymore. She's not playing sports anymore. She doesn't have all those distractions. So here's the thing. Here's what I wrote down. I accept the fact that I'm not an SVP. I should have been. I should have been. And everybody who knows me knows that. I should have been a senior vice president by now, but I didn't do the work to get there. That's the flat truth. I did not do the work to get there, so I accept that. However, I continue to go to every single convention, which we now call Elevate, that there has ever been. And now I've made the decision at this last event that it's time. It's time. And guess what? I publicly announced it. I publicly announced my goals. But here's the thing. I'm going to use the events in order to get our organization to senior vice president. I'm going to use these events. How long it's going to take? Not up to me. It's up to God. How hard do I work? That is up to me. How many people will I serve? That is up to me. But who will let me serve them? That's up to them. The larger plan is up to God. I am just a steward of his design of my life. And I know that I'm built for greatness, as is all of you, And we get to build ACN in this priority, God, family, ACN. So let me end with this little quote from the book I'm reading right now on this. I'm on the 8th time of reading it in a row. Go give her some more. Money is not a measure of goodness or worthiness. It is a measure of impact. You want more income? Have more impact. That's what I read this morning. That's how I ended my personal development reading before I got on here this morning. So ultimately, we met Mr. Thomas at a regional event. We now get to see him at international events. Because of that, he has agreed to personally mentor us, and not just in ACN, but in life, and in love, and in parenthood, and in all the ways and to be a good person. Life is about family, friends, and helping others. And ACN is definitely a method in which we can help others, whether it's through acquiring customers or helping them build their income. But conventions, events, that is your path to massive success in helping other people. Do not try to do it otherwise, because that's how it gets done.